President Trump will address a joint session of Congress on Tuesday as his second term gets off to a fast start.
And Democrats are already preparing their response with a plan to ramp up the resistance to Trump's agenda.
Madeline Rivera joins us live from Washington. Maddie, good morning. What does the resistance look like?
Yeah, Democrats are divided over that. So President Trump is expected to highlight some of the work his administration has done and the rest of the work they want to do in his first address to Congress since retaking office. He has moved with lightning speed, wielding his executive authority to address the border and reshape the federal government. And his expansive use of that power has left Democrats wondering how to respond. Axios reports House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer do want members to attend the speech, with a +1. A congressional memo obtained by Axios asks House Democrats attending the joint address bring a guest who has been harmed by the Trump administration's early actions. But other Democrats reportedly are weighing not attending. Lawmakers who are supposedly leaning against or are undecided about going include Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, and Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey, among others. Per the Washington Post, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who notably tore apart the president's State of the Union address back in 2020, is now encouraging members to, quote, let the president stew in his own juice. Pelosi, who's still widely respected within the Democratic conference, reportedly wants Democrats to focus on the Republicans' budget framework. That GOP blueprint would enact the president's agenda while also call for spending cuts, which Democrats argue would slash programs like Medicaid. That, in Pelosi's view, would be a much more effective way for Democrats to respond rather than simply interrupting the president's speech. So we'll see.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So President Trump has a joint address coming up next week in Congress. And you have the mainstream media already coming out and calling for the Democrats, demanding the Democrats to engage in a mass boycott of the president's joint address to Congress to basically show the American people that they are against the agenda that they voted for. That's exactly what the linebackers of MSNBC are advocating for Democrats to do.
Now, does that mean booing? No. Does that mean standing and turning your back? No. If I was a member of Congress, quite frankly, I don't think I'd show up. It's like, no, you know what? I'm not going. A lot of the Democrats will, but I do think that again, no glad handing. There can't be any of the normal rituals of all of this. And the Nancy Pelosi's suggestion, make it a short, clear message, make it clear to the American people that they are not accepting this, that they are going to fight against this. And this is an extraordinary moment in American history. This is not just one more episode. And I know that we all say that kind of thing, but I think that at some point, if you say this is an existential crisis, this is a constitutional crisis, act like it, behave like it.
Yep.
Don't pretend it's same old, same old.
I think that is absolutely correct. The former comms strategist in me says Democrats should collectively not attend, including Leader Jeffries, and then they should hold a press conference after the response of Alyssa Slotkin, who's delivering the Democratic response. We'll see. I think the Democrats are going, and that's part of the dang on problem.
Right
here.
Go. But you see that that Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, and they're still trying to say, well, we're going to show unity and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, if you're going to go, then you need to go and do something, to Charlie's point, drastic, to send the message. I wouldn't go. I agree with you.
Do not attend. Do not attend. You know what? We'll have more time to talk about it. I'll be taking wagers on my Instagram account about if the Democrats are going. Charlie, Tara, thank you.
So unsurprisingly, you do have some Trump deranged Democrats who have come out and stated that they will not show up, aka they're going to boycott President Trump's joint address to Congress. Take a look.
You have been trying to lead your party, lead your colleagues in being aggressive and pushing back, as we've heard a lot this morning, against Donald Trump. You're skipping his joint address to Congress on Tuesday. You believe other Democrats, House and Senate Democrats, should do the same, and why?
Oh, I think every Democrat needs to make up their own mind. I think that State of the Union speech is going to be a farce. I think it's going to be a MAGA pep rally, not a serious talk to the nation. I think Donald Trump is going to spew a series of lies about his alignment with Russia, about what he's trying to do to allow Elon Musk to essentially monetize the American government to enrich Musk and his billionaire crowd. And I'm just not going to be a part of that. Listen, the case I'm making to Democrats is that we have to fight every single day. Every single day. Republicans flood the zone. Democrats have to flood the zone. They flood the zone with lies. We flood the zone with truth. We are going to stop this billionaire takeover of government. We are going to stop their destruction of democracy, which they have to do because what they are attempting to do, gut Medicaid in order to feed another set of tax cuts to Elon Musk and his billionaire friends. It's unpopular. We're going to stop that billionaire takeover, that destruction of our democracy, only by fighting them every single day. A lot of Democrats think maybe you should, fight every third day. You should reserve your power and jump out of the bushes at the right moment. I just think that we have to be on the offensive 24/7.
Yeah, so I find it fascinating that Democrats really believe that it is in their best interest to continue to fight against what the American people voted for, right? Because that's what they're doing, okay? President Trump's approval rating is near an all-time high for his administration.
And meanwhile, a majority of Americans trust Donald Trump and Elon Musk to rein in our federal government. Trump has been regularly polling in the mid-50s. Rasmussen this week had Musk at an approval rating of 55%. And all for good reason.
Democrats have willful blindness here. Has Hakeem Jeffries not seen Trump's approval numbers?
Doing the opposite of what Joe Biden did is now the most popular thing in the country. Voters by wide margins support deportations, DOGE, tariffs, closing the border, and ending DEI. Look at that.
While on the other hand, the Democrat Party in their approval rating is basically at a historic low.
Based on your poll, based on your findings, what do people think about the Democratic Party right now?
Well, in our poll, the Democratic Party has the lowest approval rating since at least March 2018 in our polling. It's at 36%, in line with the overall approval of Congress, but significantly behind the approval that voters today are giving to the Republican Party, which is 51%. And so this is problematic because you have not only a majority of independents, 70% disapproving of the work of the Democrats, but 33%, 1 in 3 Democrats disapprove of the work of the Democrats too today. And on the other side, the party has not really come up with a strong strategy and a strong set of messages on how to handle Trump. As a consequence, 66% or 2/3 of the public today basically says the Democrats should not stonewall on Trump's initiative. They should take a wait-and-see approach, right? They should define a clear set of principles that they stand for, but not be obstructionist. And in cases like government expenditures, they actually want the Democratic Party, 2/3 of voters want the Democratic Party to work with Trump and jump on the wagon of cutting government expenditures. So the Democratic Party needs to find its footing. And this poll shows that voters in general, but even an important part of Democrats, 1/3 of all Democrats, are just not happy with the performance of the party so far.
Yeah, so that is the founder of the Harris X poll, right, from the Harvard Harris poll, a very liberal poll that basically is saying what I've been telling you guys for the longest time now. Again, I'm not an expert pollster with a fancy degree, and even I knew that, hey, it's not good for the Democrats to oppose everything that President Trump does, right? Like, that's not a good idea. Just based off the simple reality, which is that President Trump's poll numbers are at a historic high for his administration, for his presidency, and Democrats, their poll numbers are at an all-time low. And a vast majority of the American people agree, just generally speaking, with President Trump's agenda, even if there are some nuances when it comes to disagreements. For the most part, the American people voted for and agree with President Trump's agenda. So to reflexively stand against that, which is what the Democrat Senator Chris Murphy is calling for, I think is very unwise, right? It is honestly stupidity, to be honest with you. But hey, this is the path that Democrats have chosen. So we're going to see if they boycott President Trump's speech. I don't think it's going to matter, okay, either way. But if they do boycott it, basically what they're showing is that, hey, yeah, we're standing against what the American people voted for. So with that being said, we got to talk about what should President Trump address in the speech, right? I think that one of the most important parts of President Trump's speech is going to be the economy, because despite the fact that it is obvious, in my opinion, that this current economy is a product of Joe Biden's economy, okay, this has nothing to do with President Trump. You still have some polls suggesting that some Americans believe that, hey, this economy is Trump's economy, and I think that has to be addressed. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this interview featuring Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, talk about the economy on Face the Nation.
But we want to begin with the issues that are top of mind for most Americans: inflation and the economy. They may be at the top of their priority list for the new administration, but we are seeing a disconnect. When asked what they think the administration is prioritizing, Americans see inflation and the economy taking a backseat to the border, the federal workforce, tariffs, and more. In fact, according to our CBS News poll, although people do approve of him on some of those other issues, there is a 50-point gap between people who say the president should make inflation a priority and those who say he is. We want to welcome to the program Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Good morning to you, Mr. Treasury Secretary.
Morning, Margaret.
So let's dig in on this, because it seems there's a bit of a perception gap there. Our polling also shows at least half the country reports concern about paying for food and groceries and housing. They continue to call the economy bad, even more so than last month. And 49% told us the economy is getting worse. When can Americans expect to experience the benefits that President Trump said would be coming in day one?
Yeah, well, you know, Margaret, what I find interesting is for the past year and a half and during the campaign, most of the media said, oh, the economy is great. It's just a vibe session. Now that President Trump's in office, there's an economic problem. And I'll tell you what the problem was.
We were pretty straightforward on this program, sir.
Well, I haven't seen this program, but in general, this idea that working class Americans didn't know what they were talking about. They didn't know their lived experience. They didn't know what their pocketbooks were feeling. And you know, I'll tell you, President Trump was elected. One of the reasons was the affordability crisis, and we are setting about doing that. So after 4 years of disastrous policies, we're running these gigantic deficits that led to the affordability problem, massive government regulation. So what we had was a demand shock from the government spending that was met by supply constraints with overregulation. Mm-hmm. So we are in the process of deregulating, which will free the supply side, and we are cutting back the government spending. It took 4 years to get us here. President Trump's been in office 5 weeks, and I can tell you we're working every day. Mm-hmm. What I will point out, interest rates, the 10-year bond, which I am focused on, have been down every week since President Trump was president. Mortgage rates have been down every week. So that's a pretty good start.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Scott Bessent is exactly right about what is it that needs to happen in order to rein in inflation, right? What has to happen is that we have to cut spending, which President Trump is working on, okay? Despite the propaganda from the mainstream liberal media, the Republican plan is not finalized yet, okay? And the media continues to boo-hoo, whine, and cry about inflation, right? Because it is a problem that they just acknowledged, because the last 4 years, they basically told us that inflation was either transitory or it didn't exist, right? The economy is amazing. The economy is great. As soon as President Trump gets in office, now all of a sudden, oh, the economy is terrible. We're about to face a recession. Remember, these are the people that changed the definition of a recession. When Biden's economy went into a recession officially, when we had 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, right? Biden's economy went into a recession. They say, oh, no, it's not a recession, right? That's not actually what's happening. Again, it's just amazing how that works. But regardless, my point is that the mainstream liberal media and the Democrats will complain about inflation and the cost of living, but at the same time, they'll also complain about the Trump administration doing things like, for example, cutting spending that will rein in inflation, right? So again, they're not really serious about fixing a problem. They just want to rage against Trump without coming to the table for any real solutions, like the solutions that Scott Bessent outlined, which is that, hey, we need some supply side economics, which comes via deregulation and lower taxes. Okay, things that Democrats are against, right? They're against these things, okay, along with cutting spending. But the real issue with the economy that nobody's talking about, something that I have talked about before, something that I warned about, I predicted that we would be in this situation in which inflation remains elevated due to the fact that the chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, decided for political reasons to lower interest rates by 50 basis points going into the election in order to juice the economy on behalf of Kamala Harris, to help Kamala Harris win. I said at the time that this was a bad move and that it was basically setting President Trump up for failure if he wins the election by lowering interest rates too early, which could make inflation remain elevated over the 2% target that the Fed claims that they're trying to get to, except they decided to lower interest rates before we could actually get to the 2% target, which makes absolutely zero sense to me. In fact, the economy should have actually really crashed under Joe Biden. That's what should have happened. The Fed should have increased interest rates to the actual rate of inflation. So that means that they should have increased the interest rates to 9, 10, 11, 12%, maybe even higher in order to really rein in inflation. Yes, it would have hurt. It would have sucked. Okay, it would have been terrible. Okay, but it likely would have lowered inflation below the 2% target. And also on top of that, we would not be experiencing what we're experiencing right now, which is stagflation. Okay. But again, this whole soft landing strategy from the Fed is them just kicking the can down the road. And you're seeing the results of kicking the can down the road, which is inflation remaining elevated. Again, they should have actually really tanked the economy under Joe Biden, but they didn't want to do that because again, that would have hurt the Democrats. So we're paying for it. We're paying for it.
I hear you that sometimes the data lags reality, but when we are talking about people's perceptions of the economy, it's just how they're feeling right now. We see in our polling 52% of Americans say Trump's policies are making grocery prices go up. They explicitly said that on this bar chart you see there. So it's an experience and a perception issue. When does that shift? When do we see the benefits of the planning you say is underway?
Look, I think President Trump said that he'll own the economy in 6 or 12 months, but I can tell you that we are working to get these prices down every day, but it took 4 years to get us here, and we've had 5 weeks. So interest rates are down. That's a very good start toward housing affordability, toward auto affordability, and we are tackling this. At Treasury, we are going to appoint an affordability czar. We are going to have an affordability council. We are laser focused on this.
What does that mean? What's an affordability czar?
Someone who picks the 5 or 8 areas where this administration can make a big difference for working class Americans.
Okay.
Yeah, so again, this is why I believe that during this State of the Union address, which is not, I guess, technically a State of the Union, it's like a joint address to Congress, whatever, right? President Trump, with actual data, and this is an easy thing to do, right? He should actually really explain to the American people why is it that we're experiencing the inflation that we're experiencing right now. Like, acknowledge that it's a problem, but also educate the people on the fact that, no, this is a result of Joe Biden. This is Joe Biden's economy. And that's not a lie, right? Again, these are the same people, the left, the liberal media, that say, well, the first 2 years of Trump was actually Obama's economy, right? So if that's what they're saying, then I don't see how that logic doesn't apply here. So President Trump needs at least 2 years. I mean, look at inflation under Joe Biden when he got into office. It was 1.4%. He inherited a very low rate of inflation, 1.4%. That's what Joe Biden inherited. And then lo and behold, 2 years later, in June of 2022, you have inflation peak at what, 9, 10%. So it took how many years? 2 years for the American people to start feeling the effects of Joe Biden's economy. Right. So it is unfortunate that this stuff has to be explained. Right. Because look at that poll. You have people basically saying that President Trump's policies are making prices go up when that's just certainly not the case. Not as of right now. You can't say that definitively. We have to wait and see. But again, this is what we're fighting against. We're fighting against the propaganda from the media. A lot of people got to understand that, again, this is the same media that claimed that the economy was great under Joe Biden, just to now all of a sudden say, oh, no, the economy's bad under Trump. Realize you're being played, right? You're being played by the media. That's what the American people need to understand. Trump needs a lot more time when it comes to the economy. Things don't happen overnight. I understand there were promises made during the campaign, but people should have used their common sense and understood that, okay, yeah, inflation is not going to be lowered on day one. It's going to take time. And, you know, it is what it is.
Okay. Well, one of the things that we hear the president talk about a lot is the plan to use tariffs. I know this falls under the purview of Commerce and the trade rep, but you have spoken a bit about it before. If the president does roll out the 10% tariffs that he says are coming on China this week, the 25% on Canada and Mexico, how much do you think they will impact what Americans experience? The Peterson Institute says it'll cost households an additional $1,200 a year.
Look, a couple of things. I respect my friends at the Peterson Institute. I think they're a bit alarmist. I think a lot of their supporters are anti-tariff, so they take an anti-tariff position. And look, we have the experience of President Trump's first term, where the tariffs did not affect prices, and it's a holistic approach that there will be tariffs, there will be cuts in regulation, there will be cheaper energy. So I would expect that very quickly we will be down to the Fed's 2% target. So I'm expecting inflation to continue dropping over the year.
So should we expect these tariffs to come March 4th?
Well, there's a series of tariffs. There's March 4th, and then there are there's the big tariff program that's going to be outlined on April 2nd by Commerce and USTR, and that's the president's notion of reciprocal tariffs, and that's going to be very path dependent. We are going to show what are other countries' tariffs on specific goods, what are non-tariff barriers, what are the currency manipulation, what is manipulation of financing or labor manipulation, and what are these horrendous fines that the European Union's putting on our tech companies. And we are going to evaluate that and give them an opportunity to remedy that. So we could either see a ratcheting up in tariffs, or if our trading partners want to remedy what has been unfair trade, then we could see the tariffs come off. So it's going to be path dependent.
And that's Europe in April, mainly.
Well, that's across the world.
Okay. So when you say the Peterson Institute's too alarmist with $1,200 a year on the average household, what's the cost to the household? You think it's zero?
Well, we don't know yet because it's path dependent. But what I can tell you is that I'm not worried about China. China will pay for the China tariffs because their business model is exporting their way out of this deflation. They are the most unbalanced economy in modern times. And the idea that because of a tariff, that they would lower their production is wrong. They are going to continue flooding the market. They will eat this price decrease. They will eat any tariffs that go on.
So I saw you say on Bloomberg recently that Mexico has offered to match the U.S. tariffs on China, and that you would like for the Canadians to do so as well. You described it as a fortress in North America. Is that in the works?
I don't know yet. We'll see. The Mexican leadership has offered to do that. We haven't heard from the Canadians, but I think that'd be a very good start because
by Tuesday, potentially, to offset the potential punishment on them?
By Tuesday, or maybe the tariff wall goes up, and then we see what happens from there. But I can tell you that under the cover of COVID, China dramatically increased their export capacity, and they are trying to export their way to prosperity. They are in an economic crisis. They have gigantic deflation, and it's unacceptable for them to export that to the rest of the world. And I think North America would be a very good start for pushing back against this unfair trade policy.
Yeah, so despite the trade war, right, with Mexico and Canada, right, or the potential trade war, it seems as if Mexico is willing to work with us, right, in our trade war against China. But again, what Scott Bassett is saying here is essentially, listen, the tariffs are being used as a part of negotiation, except for China, right? The tariffs are actually real when it comes to China. But the tariffs, again, are a part of a negotiation to help America get better trade agreements, which hopefully will contribute to bringing prices down in the future. So again, all of this stuff is in the works, right? That is my takeaway here, which is that, hey, this is in the works. People need to be patient. People need to understand that right now, what we're experiencing is a product of Joe Biden's economy. Okay, if Joe Biden or Kamala Harris was still in office right now, if Democrats were in charge, we'd still be experiencing the exact same thing. We know for damn sure they don't have any plan to rein in inflation because they had 4 years to do it, or really 2 years to do it, and they didn't do it. I mean, they're the ones that caused it, to be honest with you. At least a vast majority of it was caused by them. So when you look at it realistically, this is something I think that President Trump needs to explain and articulate during his speech. He needs to really talk about the economy and really drive home the point that, hey, we need time, that this is not a product of my administration. This is a product of the Biden-Harris administration, the Democrats and their policies, and I need time to clean it up because things don't happen overnight when it comes to the economy. But what did happen overnight is the fact that, hey, I fulfilled my promise when it came to the border, right? Mass deportations are happening, and that the border is secure, and that Democrats are trying to obstruct, okay, from the mass deportations, which is something that the American people agree with. So I personally think that President Trump needs to hammer home the wins, okay, and he can educate people on the economy. And I think that's all he really needs to do. He doesn't really need to worry about Democrats boycotting them. Boycotting is irrelevant. If anything, it probably hurts their party because it shows that they're obstructionists and that they have no interest in actually trying to do what the American people want them to do. So, I mean, that's neither here nor there. But again, my advice to the Trump administration is, hey, drive home the wins and to educate the people on the economy. And that's what I hope that President Trump does during the joint address. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.